Thank you for joining Midsummer Night's virtual day trip to wine country, presented by Citi. I'm Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events, and we're delighted to have everyone here this evening for a special edition of virtual day trip to wine country. We are today, this evening, going to two places. In a sense, we're going first to Brooklyn, where our guest is based and where she founded the champagne producer and brand that we are profiling. And second, we're going to the Champagne region of France. Champagne dreams, everybody. Most of you know that Champagne is the only wine region in the world that is allowed to call the sparkling wine that comes from it champagne. All other sparkling wines must be called something different, something else. So you have Cava in Spain, you have Prosecco in Italy, you have sparkling wines from places like California that are made with the method champenoise, but they can't be called champagne. Champagne, as we know it, only comes from the Champagne region of France. So this is a special occasion and a special evening for us to be sampling and discussing two authentic Champagne originated selections. And speaking of Brooklyn, we're heading to Stuyvesant Champagne, Brooklyn's only champagne producer. Stuyvesant's calling card is a fresh, clean, delicious, and very high quality champagne made in the traditional methods and winemaking process. If you want to learn more about Stuyvesant Champagne, head on over and visit stuyvesantchampagne.com. And I do have, as I often do, I do have a deal spoiler alert. I like to mention these things up front early, but you can get 10% off of single bottle purchases of Stuyvesant Champagne. And you got to try this stuff. It's amazing. With the promo code New York Wine Events, all spelled out, New York Wine Events. And that 10% off is good until July 20th. So you have a limited time to take advantage, but advantage and excellent opportunity nonetheless. So I want to welcome everybody. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have along the way using the Q&A panel in Zoom. And also let us know in the chat, if you would, where you are logging in from. What city are you coming in from? We always love to see where you're tuning in from. So without further ado, it is truly my pleasure today to host Marvina Robinson. She's the founder and president of Stuyvesant Champagne in Brooklyn. Marvina has a true zest for life and travel, and she strives to bring the taste of home, spice, and culture to the Champagne community. She's one of the few African-American women owning a champagne brand here in the US. So welcome, Marvina. Thank you so much for being part of the show. We're excited to have you.
Thank you. That was such a warm welcome. I felt like I was on my way to pick up my Oscar from the audience.
You are on your way. Well, I think this is a big week for you, and this week and next week. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I first have to ask you, what inspired the name of your brand, Stuyvesant Champagne?
So Stuyvesant is actually named after the neighborhood I grew up in, Bedford-Stuyvesant. And the reason why it's named Stuyvesant is because when thinking of the name of the actual brand, I wanted the brand name to actually represent a portion of me, right? Easily, I could have named it my last name, Robinson, or something like that, though it's my name, but I wanted to have more in depth, where Stuyvesant, specifically Bedford-Stuyvesant, is where I was born and raised at. And more specifically, Hancock and Stuyvesant. So Stuyvesant Avenue is very dear to me. As a child, when I was in elementary school, I used to run up Stuyvesant Avenue to catch my school bus. Going to high school, when I came home from college, my mother didn't want to pick me up from the bus station, so I had to get on the train, got on the A train, get up to Utica. You know, as I got my first job, walking up Stuyvesant Avenue to the train station. So it's just very dear to me. So I thought it was only befitting that it be called Stuyvesant, so that it represents, one, a part of me, and two, my neighborhood, which is actually my roots, you know, in culture.
Well, I think that's an amazing backstory. And the fact of the matter, as a native New Yorker myself, I mean, Stuyvesant and the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood in Brooklyn is a storied neighborhood with a long history that goes way back many, many years. And of course, it's having these days, along with much of the rest of Brooklyn, a real renaissance of sorts with all kinds of activity in terms of creativity and innovation and food and drink. So I think it's awesome that you're there and that you've chosen to honor the neighborhood with the name.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about the area in the Champagne region of France? Because I think that people need to really appreciate this is Champagne. It's truly Champagne from the Champagne region. What's the region and the specific part of the Champagne area in France like? That
So
where
it's
you make
so
the
specifically when people think of the Champagne region, this thing of it considered downtown Brooklyn, right? But specifically, it's in the Epernay region of France, more specifically, Reims area of France. So it sounds like Reims, R-A-M-Z, but that's the pronunciation. But in French, it's actually spelled, and well, how you actually spell is R-E-I-M-Z, in case anybody want to look it up. So what people don't realize, and I actually learned this the very first time I went to the Champagne region of France, it's not that big. Like for me, I'm gonna like localize it as far as describe it from Brooklyn Street. Like imagine going from Fulton Street, maybe back to Putnam Street, from Stuyvesant maybe to Bedford Avenue. That's really how big it is. And though we have city blocks, these are not city blocks. These are like, you consider farms, right? Because you have farms and roads. And that's basically what it is. And you have different roads because it's a harvest area where you have a lot of different plots of grapes. And every house has their own plot, you know, considered it's like a farmer, you know, it's a bunch of farmers in different areas. So that's what I think people don't realize. And I was one of those people. And I only began to know about it as I began to travel out there back and forth when I was, you know, looking for the perfect house to work with to produce what I wanted to produce. So that's what I say. And I say, if anybody's planning to go to France, to definitely go check out the Champagne region. If you're staying in Paris, consider taking the Metro North to Connecticut. So it's like a 60-minute train ride. And it's actually it's a really pretty view of a train ride. So I always say, like, just don't go to Paris to sit in Paris, go outside and outer skirts.
That's so cool. And tell us a little bit. I've been to France and to a couple different places, but I've never been to Champagne. Tell us about the city or the town of Reims, because it's a storied, historic place.
Yeah, so for me, for Reims, I actually like it because, like, when you first get into the town, right, naturally getting off the train, it is kind of like a little city-ish when you first walk in, because you have like different food areas. So long story short, I missed my train one day. So I had no choice but to walk around and explore. So what I decided to do is I literally walked around. So you have some eating venues, you have some, you know, little shopping area, but as you go further out, you have to get a cab. You come more into the country area. And when I say it's beautiful, it's literally the foliage, everything, the greenery, just like you see Ken's background, that's literally what it looks like, especially when the sun is going down. It's absolutely beautiful. You see different fields. And as you get to different houses, some houses have more floral, but you get to see the actual grapes, you know, the actual plots, exactly, just like what Ken has, the actual plots for each of the different houses. And sometimes you might not see the house directly, but you'll know whose crop it is, and you can view it from, like, let's just say if I'm looking here, you can view it. But as you get closer, you go inside to whatever house you're visiting, specifically for the vineyard I work with. We go into the house, and the tour actually starts inside where you can actually view the different crops and grapes.
And have you spent any time in Reims, like down in, I hear that underneath the city, there's something like 1 million or 2 million bottles stored in the cellars, the Champagne cellars underneath the city.
Yeah, so basically when you go into most houses, all the houses I've been into, specifically one is mine and a couple of my favorites, there's always, I call it the basement or the underground. And that's really where the storage occurs at, because it's temperature regulated. And it is, you literally have like a dungeon and there's different bottles just stored. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to post a picture on our IG tomorrow. A lot of the pictures I haven't released because I was waiting to put this, I was putting together this like book together, but I think tomorrow I'll release it in our story. And they do have, most houses have thousands of bottles stored. Some bottles go back like 20, 30 years, which is different vintages, depending what they want to do with the houses, do with the actual year of the bottles.
And I actually meant to show everybody where in France we're talking about. This is sort of in the northeast area of France on the way to, I think it's sort of up by Belgium and Germany, actually. It's up north of Paris, northeast of Paris. And that's the map there you see on my right of the Champagne region. Specifically, when we talk about the vineyards, and here's a picture, actually, I think this is actually the vineyard and the grapevines that your champagne is made from these grapes.
Yeah, this is actually the Pinot Noir grape field here.
Pinot Noir grapevines and vineyard. Tell us a little bit about the grape varietals that go into the champagne you make. And you might not know this, Marvina, but I, and everyone who knows me from New York Wine Events and our virtual tastings and our local events, I'm a huge proponent of learning about the grape varietals that go into the various wines that we all enjoy. And I'm constantly saying Americans are boring. They only drink, 2 or 3 different grapes or types of wine, Chardonnay, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, whatever. And it's always interesting, I think, for people to hear. Now, in the case of champagne, there are many champagnes that are blends of 2 or 3 or more grape varietals. So tell us about the grape varietals, the types of grapes that go into the champagnes we're going to taste tonight.
Okay, so basically specifically for Stuyvesant, okay, overall, there are 5, 7 different grapes that can be used for champagne. Specifically to Stuyvesant, we use 3 different types of grapes. We use the Pinot Meunier, which is a black grape. We use a Pinot Noir, which is a black grape, and a Chardonnay, which is a white grape. We currently have 2 cuvées on the market, right? And I'm going to come back to this topic. We have 2 cuvées. We have a Grand Reserve. Ken, can you put the Grand Reserve bottle up?
Yep. Let's put that up.
As you can tell, Ken and I had a conversation before. So this right here is our Grand Reserve. And our Grand Reserve has 3 grape varietals. It has 60% Pinot Noir, 20% Pinot Meunier, and 20% Chardonnay. I'm going to come back to the tastings in about, I'm going to flip back and forth because I want to do the grape varietals first, and then I'm going to do some pairing so you can kind of have an idea of how they go. In case
so how many types of grapes are in this Grand Reserve?
So in the Grand Reserve, it's 3 grapes.
3.
Also same for the rosé. It's just different percentages.
Yep.
So here, this is actually the rosé. So it's the same varieties. It's a Pinot Meunier, a Pinot Noir, and a Chardonnay. The only difference here is for the rosé, it's a 58% Pinot Noir, 22% Pinot Meunier, and then a 20% of Chardonnay. In addition, it has a Pinot Meunier red wine add on top of it, which actually makes it the rosé.
Yeah,
and
gives it color.
Yes, exactly. And this is the Brut. Ken has it. Here's actually the bottle here. And here I actually had, I had a tasting earlier.
There we go.
Actually, the actual color here is actually salmon color. Does she do wine in Brooklyn if you stop by? Well, I'm not actually a storefront. What I am doing is, so let's just take this story back. Myra, I'm going to come to you in 1 second. I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to give you the full vision. How Stuyvesant really came about is I was in the process of actually opening a champagne bar. The champagne bar is called Coupette NYC, which is still opening, but due to COVID, I'm just shifting gears a little bit. So I wanted to have a house brand for the actual champagne bar. And you think about it, here in New York, there's a whole different bunch of bars, 1,000,001 wine bars. So I needed something to kind of set my business apart. And I wanted to have a house brand. And that's really how the actual champagne came about. And the champagne kind of took off a lot faster than I expected, because technically we only launched in February. So this is what, July, February, March, April, May, June, July. We only in 5 months. So we're doing pretty good. So we will be opening up I would call it a tasting room slash the champagne room, probably going later towards the end of the year, beginning of 2021, to see how the environment goes. But what we are doing is we are launching into stores as of August 1st with our new distributor, which is Black Hawk. So there are currently 9 different stores, 8 stores in Brooklyn that will be carrying the product, 1 store in Queens, and also 1 store in Manhattan, which have committed to orders. So if they're not doing tastings, but that's one place where you can go and get the champagne at. And also in different states, we're launching in California, Washington, D.C., Georgia, and also Florida, Chicago pending.
So, and I have a question for you, Marvina. When are wine retail locations going to start doing in-store tastings again? I know it's too early now. They're not doing them currently.
That really is dependent. Like, even though we are in stage 3 of COVID, like since they cannot have you can't dine in stores, I'm assuming that they can't have large gatherings. And I think it's also store by store basis. So that I can't control, I'm not sure. But I guess when most owners feel comfortable and to find the actual guidelines to what they feel comfortable to doing.
So before we start tasting, I have 2 things I want to get to. One is specifically with these champagnes, you're distributing, and I think this week you announced a distributor that's bringing them into these locations in New York City. Are you also getting out to other parts of the country? For example, we have people watching from Arizona, from Texas.
Yeah, so we're slowly branching out, right? So what happens is I like to work with certain distributors, right? So Black Hawk in New York, we know we have our 30-day waiting period. So papers was filed last month. So now we're in our 30-day waiting period. So Black Hawk is one we work with for New York, New Jersey. We are with LibDib for California and Florida, and also Chicago pending. Also with Black Hawk is also DC and Georgia. Okay. Extension also coming to, I'll tell you what's next. Connecticut is what we're working on, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina. Those are the next 3 that we have started conversations with. And hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we can say we want to move forward with that. So that is what we're slowly branching out. So August is the kickoff month. So I would say over the next probably 2 to 6 months, that's going to be our focus, branching out. And then from there, we're going to find, like, hopefully after we branch out to different stores over to different states, we can move forward with our tasting room located in Brooklyn, New York / Champagne Bar.
Yeah. So was that already location in place, and that's something that was in motion, is paused now, and it will be back in motion?
I did have a location that I was honing in on. I had 2 locations. One, I was probably going to sign the lease to probably going into like September, but I'm just totally just waiting all the way off. I can see how
you have to, Marvina.
Yeah, so I can wait till like all this COVID is over, because I feel like right now, once you open up a hardcore spot, you're like tied to it. And right now for me, I really want to branch out and kind of develop the brands. Once I feel safe traveling again, I'm more going to focus more on the West Coast, because we have a lot of different shops that want to carry the product. So there, I want to go there. I want to do some of the tastings live there. So I think that's more important than actually having a storefront at this very moment.
Got it. Excellent. All right. Well, let's jump into the 2 selections, starting with the Grand Reserve, the Brut. Tell us a little bit about the tasting notes on this one. And then also if there's a food that it goes with, and last but not least, what the price point is.
Okay, so we can start with the price point. So price point on the website for the Grand Reserve Brut is $56.99. So I just say 57, right?
Yep.
Plus actually your shipping, but if you use your discount code, you get 10% off. That's one. Two, so this is actually a Brut, right? Not too sweet, not very, you can notice the amount of sugar, which is called dosage, right? What I like to say, the Grand Reserve is it's not too acidic. It's very floral in your mouth, and you have hints of apple tones and gingerbread. I always tell people when you pop the cork, always smell the cork because you can actually smell it. And I see other people on here, like I think somebody, Wes is on here, Wines with Wes. Him and I did a tasting before. He can actually attest to it. He can drop a comment if he feels like it. So that's what, you smell it, right? It's floral. I always say when you take the first sip, everybody knows when you pour in a glass of champagne, you pour it on the tilt side. I like to hold the bottle from the actual bottom. Like here, this is how I like to hold the bottle. I tilt and I pour, right? Did I study winemaking? No, I did not, but I did drink a lot of it. I don't know if that...
You are an important part of the continuum. Somebody's got to make it, somebody's got to distribute it, and then somebody has to consume it as well.
Yes, I did not officially study it, but what I started doing as I got into the process, I started honing in more on specifically champagne. And you can't really have a brand without knowing about it. So one thing that what I didn't say is I spent a lot of time in France back and forth, but what I am doing is I'm actually splitting my time going into next year, 2021, 6 months, 4 to 6 months here in the city, and then 4 to 6 months out in France. So I'll be now, I don't know what you call it, by country, however you want to call it. So I'll be splitting my time here, more time on the vineyard, more time here, because I feel like it's important to be more hands-on in the process. And normally I'm normally here every other month, but with COVID, I've been not stuck here. I've been planted my roots here in Brooklyn for this is the longest time I've ever been in New York, to be honest.
That's yeah. Well, these are extraordinary times.
Right?
So now, what would you pair this Grand Reserve with for food?
So the Grand Reserve, I actually think, and I had this the other night, and we had tasting with this. I actually think Grand Reserve pairs well with salmon. A nice poultry salmon, also a nice goat cheese. So if you like cheeses, like let's just say, let's start with cheeses. If you like cheeses, I would say a nice goat cheese. And a nice manchego cheese pairs very well with this. If you're doing manchego cheese, I always say slice it very, very thinly, right? Because when fried chicken, it's a joke. You can slice it very, because it does pair well with fried chicken, because I had fried chicken with it.
Oh, I think it pairs very well with fried chicken, in my opinion.
So with the manchego cheese, I always say slice it very thinly. And with cheeses, now I did take cheese classes, so I'm really well versed with cheeses. With cheeses, I think sometimes we take chunks, right? To really understand the pleasantries and with your palate, you really want to have cheese thinly sliced, so that when you taste it, it's you get all of it in your mouth, right? And then you can also when you're taking a sip of the champagne, it'll perfectly balance off of each other. And I always say everything is off of everybody's palate, because everybody's palate is unique. What I like, you may not like. So it's also to your personal preference. I'm just giving suggestions and what I think it's paired with. What I know is best paired with, but again, what you or may not like per your dietary restriction.
I also think it might go well. I have to do the actual pairing, but I think it might also go well with, there's a Spanish cheese called Mahon.
Oh, okay.
Which is very good, and it's light. It's got some of that quality that goat cheese has. It might actually, Mahon might even go better with the rosé that we're about to talk about. But I mean, the cheese thing is infinite. It's almost as infinite as wine in terms of the kinds of cheeses. All right, well that is the Brut. That's the Grand Reserve. Let's go to the rosé. This one is my wife's favorite. Any sparkling rosé, she's sold.
Okay, so then she's sold on Stuyvesant too. So I would say with the rosé, I also think it pairs well with poultry. Number one, I would say is I don't eat beef or pork, so that's why I don't pair anything with that. So what I would say is that it pairs well with poultry, specifically a nice thinly sliced chicken breast.
Hmm.
Cooked it lightly in, I would say, lemon butter sauce, like fresh lemons, lightly butter, a little sea salt, smidge of parsley. It pairs perfectly. With a nice cheese pairing, I've actually did some experiments where we had feta cheese mixed with olive oil and rosemary, grinded
Wow,
fresh
great.
rosemary.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and using a really soft, plain thin wafer cracker. And I would say Trader Joe's has a really good, unique thin wafer cracker. It's literally paper thin. And if you leave the feta cheese, you can grind it up and it comes with a nice spread. I like to whip it and then put it in a nice dish, and you can either scoop it out or you can get a butter knife, and properly smear it on, and it pairs perfectly. Also mixed with also a nice white cheddar cheese pairs well with it
Yeah,
as sharp.
that's amazing. And this is the same three grapes, but at different proportions of the grapes from the Grand Reserve.
Mhm.
What's the price point on the rosé?
The rosé is $66.95.
I mean,
Again, use your 10% and you get your discount.
yep. Well, and listen, these champagnes, everybody, these are on the level of, when you think of really famous brands like Perrier Jouet or Moet. I mean, the quality of these coming out of this region is really high. So when you think about these price points, realize that compared to some of the other products that are more longer standing in terms of brand coming out of Champagne, these are really values in terms of pricing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to state, because I've had people ask me about the pricing, and I always say the bottles are not priced as what they really should be, right? But they're priced where I'm comfortable of the pricing for it to be at. And if you look at the process of champagne, champagne is a process to make, right? And also, it's just not about the process. Also, you're importing, right? So you have to get the product over here because we can't get here. So you can't compare a champagne to a bottle of wine or to a sparkling that's made in California. Not to say that it's any less value, but it's a whole totally different product. So that's where the pricing comes into a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We did have a question from Brock, who's watching, about what is the store in Manhattan that's going to be carrying these selections.
We can't release the stores until August 1st. So they're going to be listed on our stockist page on the website. And then also on August 1st, on our Instagram page, we're going to list it as well.
Okay.
Certain
So,
stores asked us not to say anything because they don't want any calls before, as there was people are already eager.
All right, so let's review. We've got two amazing champagnes here. Marvina, how do we buy these wines today? We can go to StuyvesantChampagne.com.
You could go to StuyvesantChampagne.com. You go to the shop tab, and then you can select your preference. I will say we are at peak volume. We just received the incoming shipment, so we're beginning to ship out some orders that were there. So we're moving quickly. All orders are placed from this week will actually begin going out next week. One good thing is, like, we're very happy about the sales and the promos we get in. So we actually had to increase staff, which is great. So thanks to all of our consumers. So we are a small boutique brand, but we are definitely growing.
That's awesome. We have one question here. Are you going to sell in Miami?
Absolutely, yes. There are one store that has committed, and then there is another pending store that put in an inquiry. So they just have to finish their paperwork, and then they can be onboarded.
All right, I'm a little bit annoyed with Emilio because he stole my question. Marvina, how did you get into the wine business?
It was by accident. This wasn't my pursuit. Like I said, it's for the Champagne bar. I was doing research. I wanted my own brand. I said, okay. At first I was like, I'm not going to sell it outside of the store. But then all the paperwork that you have to go through, the whole process, it's like, why would I just wait and keep this right here in one Champagne bar, right? Why not put it on retail shelves? And I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous to do so. I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's what I want to do. That wasn't really in my plan. And sometimes I'm a stickler. When I have a plan, I stick to my plan. I don't go outside the box. But I decided, you know what, let's just go with it. And I'm glad I did, because it actually worked out for the best. So again, nothing intentionally. Like my background is finance. I've worked on Wall Street for like over 20 years. You know, that's what I went for undergrad and graduate school. No, what's funny is I majored in biology. I was pre-med undergrad. I actually got accepted to medical school. I chucked medical school. My parents were not happy. And I ended up working in the finance industry. I liked it, didn't know anything about it, went to graduate school, and I just stayed in finance. And I recently left my finance industry a little bit over a year ago. And I will say that it has been an adjustment, and I will say that I am in love with what I do right now. Though it is work, it is not work because it's my own brand and I'm building it. I have built it from scratch and I'm continue building. And I will say it's a lot, but you know what? It's all like worth it for me at the end of the day. I get to come on, you know, calls like this, or what I call panels like this, to discuss the brand in detail. You know, I like to answer questions. I like to talk about champagnes and wines with different professionals in the industry, because I like to learn too. Like, I'm not an expert. Nobody's an expert on anything. So I like to like talk and swap stories. I'm also a big avid fan of champagne cocktails. So I do have a book coming out. I actually completed the book over COVID lockdown. So as we begin to open up a little bit more, we're working on the visuals, and hopefully the book will be it's going to be a hardcover book. It currently has 60 recipes. I'm trying to extend it to 5 more, and it will be out for the holiday season. So if you don't like champagne, you can also have champagne cocktails.
I love it. I love champagne cocktails, although
What's
I
your
kind of
favorite?
like the champagne itself. So we have 2 more questions. When will you have distribution in Connecticut?
Actually, Connecticut is going to come sooner than later. I have to finish talking to 2 wine shops, and that's probably going to be mid-August.
Coming soon. Okay. And then what drew you to champagne over other types of wine?
You know what? This is actually one of my favorite stories. So I'm not a person that has like 20 million friends. I have like a whole set of friends, and me and my girlfriends, who we grew up together from elementary school. And as we got older, we went to college. Everybody went to different colleges. So we would come home and we would get a bottle of Moet White Star, which is no longer in use. And we would split the bottle. We all pool our money. We would sit on our stoops and we would just talk and catch up. And that's really what became my drink. And then naturally, you want to experiment a little bit. So, you know, I went through my Cosmo phase. You know, let me have a Cosmo, because I was very city-ish. But I always come back to my old faithful champagne. And right now, I don't really drink hard liquor. Like, it takes a lot for me to say, let me try something else. But I have a wine fridge in my kitchen in which it holds 72 bottles. And right now it's like at 68 bottles. So I don't drink. Though I only always keep 1 and 1 bottles in my apartment of my own product, because I have to keep it here. But I try not to drink. I live by Biggie's commandments. You never get high off your own supply. So I also like to drink other products and experiment and taste.
You know what? You and I have something in common, and that is that my wine fridges are almost always full. And then there's also, I don't know if you have this, but the real reserve selections in my wine fridges, I'm not just going to bring them out if like my cousin comes over and he's not really, doesn't care about wine. He likes it, but if I pull out some amazing vintage, he's not going to know the difference between that and like Mondavi, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't pull it out. So then what happens is the wine fridges stay full because I'm just sitting on it.
And that's right. I have from the time that I've traveled, I've picked up some really good wines. Like I would say Canard Duchesne is actually one of my favorite champagnes, and I toured that house. I actually went to his champagne masterclass when he was here in New York, 2019. Like I got a special invite, and when I went to France, like I got a private tour, and I will tell you, I have one of his vintage, 8-year vintage, and I haven't cracked it yet. I'm not going to crack it until I get another bottle, so I have it already in reserve. But when I say, when I had it when I went to their vineyard, and it was divine.
Yeah. No,
those
are special moments, and you need to, you know, that's when it's helpful to have some interest in it, you can't just be totally casual like that.
Yeah, so sometimes when I tell my friends, oh, just grab a bottle, I'll be like, oh, wait, let me pick it out before you open
Yeah,
it. So you don't
exactly.
pick the wrong thing.
All right, well, everybody, you can see on my screen here, StuyvesantChampagne.com. Use the promo code New York Wine Events. There's a 10% off until July 20th, so take advantage of that. These are truly special champagnes. Marvina, thank you for bringing these to New York City. I think it's a really cool thing that the fact is that most Americans tend to just go to their brands that they always go to. And when it comes to champagne, there's so many others besides the usual suspects.
And I
So
totally agree. And what I want to do is, as we ease up, like I totally gonna, do like to do champagne pop-up bar. So that's how it works, to do like a champagne pop-up bar. So we could come in, have different champagnes, and it rotates, before the actual coupette opens up. Like once we feel more comfortable gathering depending on where we go with COVID, we're gonna be quick to do some champagne pop-up bars. So I always tell everybody to, follow our website, sign up on our website, because we list everything on social media, but we'll also be giving a heads up on different events that we're able to host. When does the code work? Okay, yes. So I realized I set up the code. I'm going to release it as soon as we drop off this call. I have to release it. I realized I didn't release it, so it's 8:05. Can you give me till 8:30 on the dot? It will be ready. 8:30 on the dot. It will be ready. And
we're gonna hold you to that, Marvina.
No, 8:30. As soon as I disconnect from you guys, not that I'm rushing, because I'm always for questions. I am going to, I realize I set it up, but I have you have to have security. So I always do like a 4-eye check. So I set it up with somebody supposed to check me, but nobody else can check me because I am the owner of the company. So I got to have to do it myself.
Exactly. Well, listen, thank you so much for being a part of this. It's great to learn so much more about the champagne, and I love your plan to spend a bunch more time in France. I think that's going to be, you're going to see even, more Stuyvesant Champagne selections, and you're going to see new directions, which are going to be exciting because of that time you spend there. So,
okay, wait, I just see a question from Elizabeth. Elizabeth says, can you talk about the importance of being a Black female in the wine industry? Okay, that is a really great question, because I will say this, being a minority and a woman in the industry is very underrepresented, right? Like I said, I've worked on Wall Street and it was also underrepresented, but being in the wine industry, it's a double. So I will say why is it important, because I always say that it's good to expand and diversify. And sometimes when you think of the wine industry, specifically champagne, you don't think a woman, never a Black woman, is behind a brand. And sometimes people automatically dismiss you or denote you. And I've been in circumstances where people attempt to dismiss me. And my professional side of me always correct people to let them know who I am, what I stand for, and what my brand is about. And if I feel like I've been communicated improperly, I kind of correct again in a professional manner. So it's not easy, I will say that, because it's like creating your own lane. You're in a two-way street, but you want to create a third lane. You have to pave your own way. So I will say, when I first started this brand, it wasn't easy. Like, no house was like, can't have your own champagne brand. I'm not interested. I like a lot of people were saying no, or was giving me a hard time. Like, why do you want to do this? Why not just do a wine? And I'm like, why are you even asking me that? If we're talking about champagne, why are you asking me about wine? So I would say you have to be thick-skinned, and you have to be able to accept the word no, but say, no is not my final stop, and find a workaround or a way around it. And the reason why I chose the vineyard that I chose to partner with, because we are partners, is because, you know what, it is a woman that actually runs the house. And two, like when I talk to people, one, I talk fast, and two, I have big ideas. And I lay my ideas on what I have, like what I want to accomplish now, what I want to accomplish down the future. And what I want to say is, if this person could see and understand what I'm visualizing, they're saying, well, we have to figure out a way to do that. As long as you're not telling me no, I'm okay with that, because I'm okay with taking the time to figure things out. Because I can sit down at a table and we could talk for 2 to 3 hours, And I can say, okay, as long as we can figure this out, I'm with it. So that's like the hardest part of saying that you'll have to grow, and you're going to grow in your own time, because we're not represented properly. Not say properly, but we're not highly represented in the field. So you're a norm. It's like being the new sneakers against a Air Jordan, which sells out instantly. So you're going to take my reject sneakers, and I'm going to grow in the industry. But guess what? I may not sell as fast as the Jordans, but I'm going to grow and I'm going to make my presence known. So that's the type of person I am, where, again, we're like just 6 months in, and I think we're doing pretty well. So we're going to grow. I'm going to grow the brand. I'm going to grow my face around the brand. And I hope, like, after a year, I want to begin to take on, like, interns, people who want to know more about, the champagne industry or overall wine, or become a mentor to somebody, to give them the experience that I had, so that maybe they don't have to go through so much that I went through. Like, okay, this is really how you start your foundation. And then, okay, now you have that, something that you didn't know, now you have that. So that's how I think it's very important. And it's important because it shows a younger generation or kids, like, what, this is something that really isn't predominantly, minority women or minorities at all, whether you're Black, Hispanic, is in this field. But look, this woman or this man, whoever it is, but we're talking about, in my case, this woman is in this field and she's created her own lane. Okay, I know that I can achieve anything. And even if it's not champagne or wine, let's just say whatever it is, it can be something else. So that's why I do think it's important. And I will say, when I started out, I didn't realize that I was one of the people to say, like, why is it important? Like, I would be asking that question. But as I began, and specifically a lot of the events in the country have turned, I've realized that I am part of that really small minority. And I just completed an article from Forbes. You could go on our website, it's there. And a lot of the questions that you're asking have been asked. And I give out specific examples of what I've been through and other things to how you can overcome it and why to keep striving. And you have to have different viewpoints. So yes, it is important because it shows that you can do anything you set your mind to. You'll just have barriers like anything else. You just got to be able to overcome your barriers and obstacles.
Well, I think, frankly, I agree with everything you just said. And the fact of the matter is, you're talking about the power of possibility and believing in the power of possibility. And then for me, when I know your story about your friends and when you would get a bottle of Moet, and that's what you like, that's what you're interested in. So why not you be the person who brings a brand to life? And then last but not least, you're a student of the business. You're a student of the winemaking process. So to me, those three ingredients make perfect sense.
Thank you.
So,
thank you, Tina. I like your comment. Thank you, Tina. Thank you for all the comments. I've been reading them slowly, but thank you very much. I try to keep up.
This was a good group tonight. We had a lot of people chatting and with Q&A, and so thank you everybody for your engagement and your interest. Well, listen, I can't wait to open my first bottle of Stuyvesant Champagne. I know I will soon, and I'm looking forward to stopping by the tasting room when things get going.
Yes, so, and you can do a live, we could do a live panel from there as well.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that.
Hold me to that. You got everybody that's heard me say it. It's
that's
recorded.
Right. Myra, hold us to it. Myra, Marcia, all you guys. All right. Thank you so much, Marvina. It's been great visiting.
I'm going to go do the code right now.
Do the code. 8:30, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do it. It'll be ready in like 5 minutes because we're getting up a little bit early. So I'm going to like do it before I get distracted.
Awesome. All right. Thank you again. And thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you on the next Day Trip to Wine Country. Next week, we're doing another Brooklyn brand, Brooklyn Crush.
Oh, so I'm going to be on for that.
Excellent.
For my Brooklyn people.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're welcome.